This is the top slide of the Celtic, and when it's over here, more or less in the middle, it is really hard to turn, and the further away that way, the harder it gets. And the more I move it this way, the lighter it gets. And also, the more left and right movement there is. And when I get over here, again in the middle, there is no left and right movement. And every time I move it completely that way, it also reveals a lot of dirt that every time I clean off, and it comes back automatically. There is also a little chunk of the casting missing here. So this looked like a very long time ago crash or something, and it broke a piece off. Now, what I think is happening here is that the gib, instead of being parallel, it moves a little bit this way. Is there maybe some dirt between two, or is the thing bent, or I don't know. To figure it out, let's take it apart. Shit. Note to self: before taking a machine apart, first empty the chip pan. But I found it. Now it's... not again. It's maybe important to note that I never took this thing apart, so this is not a how-to video, but let's figure it out. Cool. If you don't have the right tool to do this, use violence. But only a little bit. I suppose normally there is a key in here somewhere. Oh yeah. It escaped. In here are two roll pins. Talking about dirty. Got you. Man, it not only looks dirty, but it also has the smell of please help, I need it clean. I degreased the parts here using some paint thinner and of course also a piece of my two-person bed sheet. I'm single, I don't need a two-person bedsheet. So no sandpaper, no stone, no nothing, only degrease. So now normally if I put it back together there would be no change. Let's find out. As you can see here, it slides freely, and from the moment I pass this spot here, it's binding. So indeed there's something wrong. Let's figure out what. I give the gib a light touch of surface plate, and this side looks fine, but the other side, it's hard to show, but here's a little bit rim. So I try to take it off, and this is indeed the side where it's binding. So it could well be that it's damage here. That's the reason why it doesn't work. I reinstalled the thing here on the lathe just so that it doesn't escape when I try. And movement, slide easily, comes over the middle, and it's hard and no movement. Which means that my cleanup and polishing and filing, all this was for nothing. And because I have no idea what's happening, I think it's time to take some measurements. But before I do that, first I want to be sure that these things are more or less straight. So I cleaned up the surface that comes on the bottom, put it on the surface plate, and the thing rock solid. No movement whatsoever. And the other side. This is of course where the top part slides on these two surfaces and inside here. I think it's a good result. Now of course it could well be that this thing is touching only on 3 little points somewhere between these two surfaces. So to make sure we're taking good measurements, I will blue it with my black marker. Right, what do we've got here? It's touching here over the total width. Maybe I'll bring you a little bit closer, see better. It's touching here, a tiny bit here in the middle, and it's sliding out of my hands. I'm gonna put it on the table, it's too heavy. This is much better. As I said, we see that it touches here and here and here a lot, and here a lot, and here almost nothing. Right, let's find another way to measure to see if these things are straight or not. I think I found a way. I installed my indicator on the table of the shaper. I think we can call this straight, which means if I install my part over here and I give it a touch of indicator, it should be straight too, right? Let's find out. Right, I had to install two other bolts to hold the thing down because the other two refused to cooperate. A bit too big. Right, nothing. This is the part where I could see that the thing was touching very well. And here we have 3 100ths. And here we go to 6. And here we have 3. So there's a difference in height between here and here of 3 100ths. And here it tells me 1 100th. So a difference of 1 100th in height between here and here. Which means this thing, if my measurements are correct, has a little bit a twist in it. But when I put it on a surface plate, I can feel it. Let's try it here on the table of the shaper. No rock and roll. And then I thought, maybe it is the gib. I put it flat here on table. Absolutely no rocking. When I look between here, no light. Flip it around. Absolutely no rocking, and when I look between here, no light. So for me this gib is straight. If the gib is installed, in theory this surface and this surface of the dovetail, they are parallel, and it should be possible to measure them with 2 pins. Now 2, I have only 1 here, but it's just an example. But the bottom surface, this surface here, is rough. So taking measurements on a rough surface, that doesn't work. The only part I can measure with the pin idea is the slide itself. I have here 2 the same drill bits, made in Brazil. It's marked here. Zero. Well, that's difficult. Plus 2 100ths. Zero. Check again over here. Minus 1. This tells me that this side is a tiny bit smaller than this side. Which of course makes perfect sense, because here comes the tool holder and here are the most forces. And when we use a Topslide, it is this part that is used the most. Behind here almost nothing. I used a very fine polishing paste that I put of course on the dovetails, and now that I have taken it apart and cleaned it up again, I can see the spots where the thing is touching. So there's a little bit over here. I will bring the camera closer, but I don't think it will show up. And on the gib also a few spots. And on this part it's everywhere. So this not gonna touch. And these few spots I will give it a touch of sandpaper and hope for the best. Little change of plans. I'm polishing like crazy for 2 days and it's getting a tiny bit better, which means if I have to do it all by hand, I will be finished for October. That's too long. So I installed the thing here on the shaper, installed the shear tool, I dialed in 2/100ths of a millimeter, oil everywhere, and of course also the finest feed I can set here on the shaper. Let's do this. I think it's again time to change the plans. I want to take off a tiny bit, 1 maybe maximum 2/100ths, just to make this surface straight, and it's a little bit bumpy, just a little bit. But I suppose because of the sliding action, the surface itself became so hard that my cutting tool doesn't want to cut it. At some places it left a little bit a groove in it, and that's all, which means now I'm making it worse. I think it's time to give it a go on the decal. Okay, all set up and ready to go. I just touched off, so I'll dial in nothing, and I will give a complete pass everywhere just to see what happens. This is an almost brand new carbide end mill, 12mm wide, and I will use coolant to wash the chips away, and this coolant also leaves a better finish. In theory you don't need coolant on cast iron, but it works better. That looks good. I will clean it up a bit and then we do a test fit. Before I turn the camera on, I didn't try. So you will be witness at the same time as I am. It seems to work. Because I took off a tiny bit of thickness of these two surfaces, of course now the slide is a bit lower, which means the gib is sticking out a bit. But I think it will be an easy fix if I use a little bit of this packing material that I'm gonna put between here. I think it will work. No play and it works.